tonight's session is on buying a used car. So let's say a prayer, and I'll introduce, do the necessary introductions, and then we'll begin. Dear Lord, please may you be with us as we go into this session. I'm praying that it will be informative. I'm praying that people will leave with the necessary tools and skills to be able to facilitate their own buying. And I'm just praying that everything will go in accordance with your will. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, I mean, just quickly, you can either say or you can type in the chat. Who here already has a car? Well, just put. Have you got? Has everybody? Does everybody here drive already? Just let me know. Either say it to me, or you can write it in the chat, please. Okay, yeah. Reactions.
Yeah,
that's good.
Thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Thumbs up if you've got a car. Thumbs up if you've got a car. Okay, thumbs up if you've got a car. Okay, so people have already got cars. People have already got cars. And another one. You can do another film. Okay, so Mike hasn't got a car. That's okay. That's okay. That's good. So we're here to learn. How many of you have had a negative experience regarding purchasing a car or purchasing your first car? You've had a negative experience. Thumbs up again if you have. Thumbs up again if you had. Negative experience. Okay, Leslie. Anybody else? Okay, so just one person. Okay, couple people with a negative experience. Anybody who's had anybody with a positive experience? Thumbs up, positive experience. All right, okay, calm. All right, okay, so some Craig's been positive. Okay. Just quickly, last question. Pastor Hush went through a few questions before I hand over to Pastor Hush, or introduce him rather. What did you love about your first car? You just dropped this in the chat, and why? What did you love about your first car, and why? What did you love about your first car, and why? When I look back to my first car, I think it was £340. £340. Central locking. Drove up and down the country with that. It got stolen from me twice, but I managed to get it back. The first time at least. Okay, well, Pastor Hush is very experienced in buying and selling cars. I think he was working in the motor trade industry prior to becoming a pastor, or at one stage in his experience. So he's very experienced in this area. I know many youth across the conference have sought advice, help, and assistance from him in buying used cars prior to now. I know he's helped many people with buying cars, and he has a repertoire of buying a car and selling it for more than he initially bought it for when he's finally finished with it. So he knows what he's doing, and so we're thankful to him that he's able to come this evening and share with us some things on buying a used car. So Pastor Hush, thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and I'll hand over to you this time.
Okay, yeah, well, thanks, Sam. It's a bit of an unusual request, this one. I've never done a presentation on buying and selling cars, but it's an opportunity for me to share a little bit about my journey. And I'm not an expert, but I certainly know more than anybody else on the call, I would imagine. But just to give you a little bit of background on me, I left school at 15 years old, 1985. And for the first 9 years of my working life, I was working in the motor industry. I was a panel beater spray painter. I have sitting gills. I fully time served panel beater spray painter. I've got letters after my name in industry. I'm an associate. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Motor Industry. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Road Transport Engineers. And I was insurance assessing cars. I was managing body shops. So in those short 9 years, I did quite a lot. And part of that experience, in the background, I was buying and selling used cars. because we were working for main dealers, when the Part X's were coming in on the main dealers, I would be buying the Part X cars, the cars that were traded in for newer cars or a new car. I would be buying them for what the dealer purchased, and I would sell them on the second-hand market at a slightly increased rate. That happens, and that's what I was doing in the background. So I had 9 years of doing this and that, and my favorite TV program on terrestrial television is Wheeler Dealers. How many of you seen Wheeler Dealers on TV? Or there's another program called Car SOS, because that's me through and through. I can sit and watch Wheeler Dealers every day, one episode every day. It takes me back. I'm in happy land when I'm watching that, because that's my old life, and it's therapeutic to me, because I know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. But anyway, I'm far happier now, but I like to reminisce. So anyway, so that's me. A bit of background. So we're talking about used cars. It's a huge issue, and basically, when you're looking at buying a used car, you need to be first of all looking at your budget. But in fact, before we get to the budget, let's just talk about the different car manufacturers. We've got basically cars that come from Japan. We've got cars that come from Europe. We've got cars that come from the US of A. 3 big areas of the world producing most of the cars. There used to be 2 manufacturers pumping cars, mainstream. I'm talking about factory production, mass produced, not little kind of backstreet bespoke cars. But we have Europe, we've got Japan, and we've got America. The American cars, so let's just look at the American cars. The big popular ones are Vauxhall, which is the British, it's the British version of General Motors, and the European version is Opel. So Opel, Vauxhall, General Motors, it's all the same manufacturer. They're all American. The cars are reasonable in terms of quality and reliability. Then you've got some other ones that have came in more recently in the last 20 years or so. So Ford is American, okay. You've got Ford, they're okay. You've got General Motors or Vauxhall, they're okay. But more recently, you've had others like Dodge and Chrysler. I haven't had anything to do with those cars because I left the industry long before they came out and were imported. So Ford, Vauxhall, they're the big American. They're okay. Not top of my list, but they're okay. They're not at the bottom. They're somewhere in the middle in terms of quality and reliability. And then we've got the European cars. So the European cars, you're looking at what? You're looking at the Italian. So you've got the Alfa Romeo. What else have you got? You've got Fiat, Alfa Romeo. They're the big ones. You've got the French. So the French have got Citroën and Renault. Citroën and Renault. And then you've also got the the Swedish, which is Volvo. There used to be Saab, but Saab went out of business. So now we've only got the Volvos. So they're your European cars. Of the European cars, the Swedish cars have an excellent reputation for reliability, longevity, and also strength as well. The crash tests are coming very high. And then you've got the French. French are okay. Citroën, Renault, okay. I've never owned a French car, and I probably never will because they're not me. I'm not into French cars, but that's just a personal choice. They're okay. They're somewhere in the middle. Then you've got the Italian. I have had a Fiat Multipla. Wouldn't buy another one. I'm not really into Italian cars, but others would disagree with me, but that's just me. And then you've got the Japanese. My favorites are the Japanese. Japanese, extremely reliable, extremely cheap to run, parts are cheap, and very, very economical as well. Very cheap to buy in the second-hand market as well. Japanese, got lots of manufacturers in Japan. Okay, who can tell me some Japanese car manufacturers? I forgot deliberately. That's all. You can put your mics on. Put your mics on.
Toyota.
Honda, Kia.
Kia, I think is Kia. Yeah, there's a lot of cars come out of South Korea. So you got
Nissan,
Toyota, Honda, Nissan,
Lexus.
Yep. What else? You got another couple I can think of. Anyway, Japanese cars very good. Lots of cars coming out of South Korea. What are they? Deo, Kia. So yeah, South Korea as well. I just omitted that from the original list because I haven't had anything to do with South Korean cars, so I don't know. But the other cars, yeah. But top of my list is Japanese, for for the for reasons of the especially the Nissan and the Mazda. Well, they're all very good economically. Mitsubishi, Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Nissan. Um, they're all very good reliability. The cheaper ones to buy in the second-hand market are the Nissans. Okay, then maybe the Mazdas, Mitsubishis, then Honda, Toyota tend to hold their prices. But you won't go wrong if you're looking to buy a second-hand Japanese car. So you can sense from where I'm coming from, I'm recommending Japanese, Japanese, Japanese. Then after the Japanese, I would go for Swedish, but the parts are more expensive. The repairs are more expensive. And then after that, the American, and then after that, the French and Italian. So that's where I'm coming from my experience in the motor industry. And again, I'm not an expert, but for me, it'll be Japanese or Swedish. German, I haven't mentioned the German. German cars. Yeah. Did somebody want to say something? No. German.
I was going to say
Yeah, can't forget German. So in Germany, we've got what? We've got VW, and we've got Mercedes, and we've got BMW. Yeah, BMW. VW is slightly the cheaper of the three. Then we've got Mercedes and BMW. Reliability, they're very good. Quality and build, very good. Parts, very expensive. Labor when they break down, extremely expensive. So that's why I've generally stayed away from BMW. I have had a Mercedes van, and it was very good. But when it started showing some signs of not working properly, I got rid of it because I don't want to be paying BMW repair costs. Certainly don't. It's no problem spending £1,000 repairing a VW van, £1,000, no problem. BMW servicing, 600-700 quid, no problem. Mercedes, same prices. So you can go for BMW, but just bear in mind, very expensive to keep running. Servicing costs are quite high compared to Japanese and American and the others. So that's kind of the range of the cars. What would I go for? Japanese, simply because they're a good all-round sturdy workhorse. I was going to put the lights on in my room here because it's getting dark. Right, I've got some notes here. So the first question you want to ask is, what's your budget, right? What can I afford? What can I afford? And what am I gonna? And how am I gonna pay for this? You got some options today. If you've got the cash savings, or you've got help from family, parents, etc. You've got cash, so cash in hand. And cash in hand is always the best way of purchasing second-hand cars. You get better deals, cash in hand. If you want to get something on finance, there's some good finance deals available. Interest rates are fairly low, or you get a bank loan. So you get finance through the company you're purchasing the car from, or you have cash in hand, or you get a bank loan. Always best to save up and buy a car with cash on the second-hand market. So I want to share with you now the pros and cons of buying cars at different ages. If you buy a new car, well, this is a presentation on buying second-hand cars. If you buy a new car, you need to understand, and I wanted to put this in the presentation. If you buy a new car, you're going to be throwing away a lot of money because you're paying what, about £15,000, £20,000 for that new car. In the first 5 years of that car's life, you're going to lose half the value of the car in the first 5 years. So there's a massive depreciation. So there's money going down the drain. Yes, the pros are you're paying for reliability, you're paying for peace of mind, you can go on long journeys, and the likelihood is it won't break down because it's a new car, the parts are not worn, they're nice and fresh and tight. So they're the pros of buying a new car. Trouble-free motoring, You tend to have warranties on new cars, 3 or 5 year warranties, and then you're MOT free for 3 years. So it's trouble-free motoring. You just jump in, drive, but you're going to be paying £300 a month, 250 to £400 a month, £500 a month for the luxury of having peace of mind. For me, that's not me. I want to be a little bit more of a careful steward. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying it's morally wrong to buy a new car, but I did buy a new car once in my life. When I was a pastor in the West Midlands, I bought a brand new Skoda Octavia. Haven't mentioned them yet. I bought a brand new Skoda Octavia. I had it for 2 years, and there was an earthquake. Epicenter was in Dudley around about 2001. I can't remember the exact date, but my chimney fell off the roof, and it bounced and it rolled off the roof and landed on my car. The car was written off. I would never buy a brand new car. Maybe that was the Lord judging me for buying a new car. Just kidding. So that was an earthquake in Dudley. If you're from the West Midlands, you remember that, around about 2001. So buying a new car, trouble-free motoring, jump in, drive anywhere in the world, trouble-free, but you pay for it at a premium. Then there's the car that's about 5 years old. Okay, it's no longer £20,000. You get a 5-year-old car for between, I don't know, £7,000 and £10,000, depending on the model and the make and the spec of the car. You're paying between 7 and 10. You're still getting fairly trouble-free motoring. The car's been well serviced, etc. You're paying that sort of money. You're going to get maybe another 4 or 5 years out of it before potential expenses start coming in. That's another option. But this is what I like. I like going for the older car. And this is the price range that's between £1,000 to £2,000. This is me. This is my world. The world of Pastor Hush is the price range of between up to £1,000 to £2,000 maximum. The reason I like that price range is because when you know what you're looking for, and again, in this world, there's nothing certain, but with a bit of caution, a bit of knowledge, a bit of patience, you're able to find a reasonably good car that's going to last you 2, 3, 4, 5 years, even for £1,000 or £1,500. And so this is what I want to focus on, this particular price range. You haven't got a lot of money. Your parents are not going to throw a lot of money at you. You want to buy your first car. Remember, your first car needs to be cheap to insure because you haven't got no claims bonus. So you're looking to keep your expenses to a minimum when you're starting to drive, because you want to keep your monthly insurance costs to a minimum. So the older the car, the cheaper it is to insure. That's a principle. The older the car, the less value the car is in terms of resale value or the sale value, the cheaper the insurance premiums will be. So this is the area in the world of the first time buyer. That range between, I don't know, 500 up to £2,000. And like I said, that's my world, and that's the world I lived in. And they were the type of cars that I bought and sold way back when. And they're also the cars I drive now. I have 2 cars in my family. My wife has a car, and I have a car. My wife's car is a Nissan, is a Mazda 3. My car is a Mazda 3. So we have 2 Mazda 3s. My wife's cost £1,500. It's on a 59 plate. So that is now 10 years old. My car is on a 56 plate, I think. So it's about what? That makes it about coming up to 14 years old. Both Mazda 3s. So when you're looking for a second-hand car in that price range and you're looking to buy, this is what we're going to focus on now. These are the things you need to understand. All right. We've done that. Right. These are the things you need to look at. So, first of all, you need to be patient. You need to have a little bit of knowledge and be cautious. I want you to know that probably 90% of cars on sale on the market, in the second-hand market, are on sale for a reason. That reason might be they've been traded in, but they tend to be the slightly more expensive cars. Cars on sale in the cheaper second-hand market, the range that I want to talk about now, they're on sale for a reason, generally. Now, some of those reasons are noble, some of those reasons are far from noble. And the sellers, the person selling the car, is selling it for a reason. whether that car has been traded in for something slightly newer, it's been sold for a reason. Those reasons are varied. The reason could be that there's a major service due. It's going to cost £2,000 to change the cam belt, the timing belt, change the oil and all of the gearbox oil and all of this sort of thing. It could be a massive service bill, and they feel that it's not important to keep the car because it's costing too much money. They'll trade it in. So we have to watch out for service history. The point is service history. People sell cars because it might be due a very expensive major service. So you've got to check the service history. Looking for a car that has been serviced regularly. You never buy a car without a service record book. This is critical. Ask for the service history. The service book should be there. If the car's been cherished and looked after, the owner will not lose that service book. Even if the car's been passed from owner to owner over the years, if it's been looked after, there will be a service book. And you're looking for a service book that's got a full service history. A full service history. Doesn't have to be the dealers, the manufacturers, the brand's service stamp. It doesn't have to be that. But so long as it's got a service stamp from a regular garage, the first 2 or 3 will normally be the dealer stamp. But then as the car gets older, the owner gets, doesn't want to pay those premium prices for servicing, which will be 60, 70 pounds an hour. He'll go to his local garage and just pay 35, 40 pounds an hour. That's fine. So long as it's got a fully stamped up service book. For both my cars, service books, fully stamped up, and I get them serviced every year. I can do them myself, but I've decided now I don't have the time. I just don't like being on my back under the car. So I take them to a garage and they change the oil and filter regularly. So a car with a service book. Then you need to see, the car will tell you if it hasn't been looked after. The car will tell you, and the price must reflect that as well. So the first thing to look for is a fully stamped up service book. The next thing is the miles. You're looking for a car with reasonable miles. Cars on average do about 12,000 miles a year. And cars are priced based upon the average miles. If it's a high mileage car, the car will be less. It'll be cheaper to purchase. If it's a low mileage car, the principle is the car will be generally more expensive on a forecourt. So you're looking for a car with reasonable miles. Modern engines last a lot longer than they used to. When I first started working in the 80s, if a car had 100,000 miles on it, you wouldn't buy it. You were looking for cars with 50, 55, 60,000 miles. Because when engines were getting up to the 100, 110, and 20, they were coming to the end of their life. But now, with technology advancing, the longevity of engines can go on for 400,000 or 500,000 miles now. They never used to do that. But now they do. But still, you want to be looking for a low mileage car. If it's a car 10 years old, looking for ideally something with about 70,000, 60 would be great. 50, amazing. But you're looking for something between 70 and 80, 85, 90,000 for a car 10 years old with that service history. That's fine, and you'd be looking to pay a reasonable price for that. So I paid, just like I paid $1,500 for the 2009 Mazda, and I paid $850 for my 2006 Mazda 3. $850. The Mazda 6 had 88,000 miles on, and the 2009 Mazda 3 had 77,000 miles on. So you pay a little bit more for less miles and a little bit newer. So you're looking at low miles, you're looking at a full service history and a stamped logbook as well. You're looking at, so when you're looking at a second-hand car, you want to see good tires. You want to see it's got 4 good tires with good tread. That means that's the first time the car's been well maintained and looked after. 4 good tires, good tread. And then you want to look for dents and scratches, wear inside, if the cloths are ripped and torn and smells of cigarettes. You want to buy a car that's been looked after, and the car will tell you if it's been looked after. Yep. Do we have any questions at this point?
Someone's asked, Pastor, what
Yeah.
are your views on electric cars?
Electric cars.
Mm.
Well, they're expensive to buy, but they're cheap to run. Because it depends if you buy a hybrid. Well, the fully electric cars like these Lexus. No, not Lexus. What do you call them? Teslas. The fully electric cars are super expensive. My osteopath just bought one, and I think he paid about £90,000 for his Tesla, and he'd have to keep it 20 years to get his money back. But you know, I don't know. I can't afford £90,000 for an electric car. When the time comes when we are electric, if Jesus doesn't come before, and I think he will, the prices will have to drop because I can't afford £90,000 for a new Tesla. I think the cheapest ones are about 40, 50, aren't they? But I'm not an expert in Teslas. But hybrids, yep, hybrids are cheap. My sister-in-law bought a hybrid. She's on the battery in town, doing those short journeys in town, and then she's on the engine for the longer journeys, and she loves it. Cheap to run. So yeah, hybrids. But hybrids generally are more expensive because the technology came out fairly recently. So hybrids are still holding their prices. I don't think you'll find a hybrid in the price range of between 500 and 2,000, but you might get one down to about 5,000 now. You might find a hybrid around about the £4,500, £5,000 mark and above. But hybrids, yeah, it's the way to go. It's cheap to run. Any other questions?
So questions come through. What's too old for a first car?
What's too old for a first car? Depends on the car. Sam, I bought you a classic, didn't I?
Yeah.
It
was like 25 years old.
Yeah, I bought Sam. I went to the auctions with an Adventist friend of mine from Nottingham. We went to the auctions, and I bought him a 25-year-old. What was it again? Was it a Mazda?
Mazda 323.
Mazda 323. But how many miles was on that one?
It was about, I think it was between 60 and 70,000.
60 and 70,000 miles, full service history and all of that. Beautiful condition. 25 years old. And I think when everything was paid for that, it was about 800 or 900. How much was that one again?
That was the 300. It was less than £400.
Yeah, but then I had to pay a little bit of something on top. Anyway, but it was so cheap. So there you go. You can't find them. That was a Mazda 323. I think that's the one that got stolen, wasn't it?
Yeah. Stolen twice.
Yeah, that's the one that got stolen. So you can't buy, on occasion, extremely old cars, older than you, and they're perfectly fine. I mean, you wouldn't be driving them across Europe to Romania, but you'd certainly be driving them around Birmingham, around Manchester, and you'd be, hopping between churches when they reopen. You can do that with a Mazda 323 and others. So how old's too old? If you know what you're looking for, you can find something 20 years old, perfectly good. Perfectly good. And now, when you're getting this new car, and it's your first car, you're only looking to keep the car for 2 or 3 years anyway, because you want to build up your no claims bonus. The point of keeping the prices cheap and buying cheap and cheerful as your first car purchase is because you want to build up 1, 2, 3, 4 years no claims bonus. So you're buying something that's going to be reasonably small. The engine is reasonably small because you're keeping your insurance premiums low. I bought my Mazda 3, the 56 one, Mazda 3, for Addy. Addy's 18. So when he hasn't passed his test yet, he's learning. He's a good driver, but he hasn't gone in for his test yet. When he passes his test, that's his car. So he's going to have a Mazda 3. It's a 1.4 engine, 1.4 litre, Mazda 3, 56 plate, and we've already priced the insurance for him, and it's affordable. The insurance for him, his age, with no claims bonus, is going to be in the region of about £1,300, which is okay for someone who's starting out to drive. So we have another question. What is your view on buying cars from carport salvage with the intention of... Can you just read that for me?
Yep. So couple questions. Let me read to you. There's some questions above that. So let me come to do it in order.
I'm going to come on to, shall I buy from a dealer, shall I buy private, or shall I buy from a backstreet sort of trader, main dealer, backstreet trader, home trader? I'm going to come on to that. So, but ask the questions anyway. Go on.
So we got what's too high mileage? What's too high of a mileage for a car that has around 5 years, that's around 5 years old with good service history from a dealership?
Right. So what's too high?
What's too high?
If the car's got, if it says motorway, mainly motorway miles, you're going to be asking the question, who owned the car before you? All right. Where did you buy it from? These dealers that are selling cars that are maybe 5 years old, they've gone to auctions to purchase them, right? Because they're called fleet cars. Mega companies, big organizations have got company cars or fleet cars. So all their reps, the middle management, are all driving these company cars. Now, if the employee is driving that car on the motorway every day and they're a company rep, I don't know what they might be doing, but if they're a company rep up and down the motorway, driving between London and Edinburgh, and they've got 150,000 miles on a Volvo with full service history, that's not high. That's not high. As long as it's got the full service history and it's motorway miles, that's not high at all. I bought a Volvo S60 about 5 years ago now, with 145,000 miles on, full service history, one owner from you, there's one owner from you, full service history, 145,000 miles, and it was a diesel. So I had that car for four and a half years, and I put 105,000 miles on that car. And so it had about 250,000 miles on when I did sell it. I had to sell it as scrap because the gearbox was jumping, and that's big money, thousands of pounds. The gearbox, the engine was fine. The gearbox was starting to wear. And so I got my money's worth. I paid £2,000 for it. I think it was £2,000 I paid for it. And I had it for 4.5 years and 105,000 miles. That's pretty good value for money. So I was happy to scrap it for 200 quid. I got 200 quid back. So you could buy something like a BMW with 150,000, full service history, motorway miles, it's not high. But if you're buying a little Toyota, what are those little tiny Toyota things?
Yaris?
Yaris. If you're buying a little Toyota, 1.2 Toyota Yaris with 145,000 miles, run a mile. Because it's likely not to be a diesel, it'll be a petrol. The engine will be wearing out, and there's a reason why that Yaris is being sold. But if it's a diesel and it's got full service history, it's a 2-litre plus, or even a 1.8, or even a 1.6. These 1.6 engines now. That might not be high, and the price will reflect the mileage, so you might be getting a reasonable bargain. But you got to look for, is it motorway miles? Who's been the owner? Is it corporate? Has it been a rep's car up and down the motorway? Etc. etc. So,
what's the difference between miles and non-motorway miles?
Motorway miles is when the engine is so when on the motorway, there's obviously very little, minimal stop-start. So the engine is at speed, it's breathing nicely. It's not going up and down the gears. You tend to be between 6th and 5th and 4th gears in that overtaking range. So there's less wear and tear on the gearbox, and there's less wear and tear on the engine itself, because the engine's breathing nicely. It's in the zone. It's cruising at 70 miles an hour if you want to be legal. It's cruising at 70 or 80 or 90, and it's in the zone, and the engine's breathing nicely. The oil is flowing nice. It's being pumped around. Everything's getting lubricated, and so there's less wear. If the car is, if there's a lot of cold starts in the car, short journeys, there's more wear on the engine. When the engine is cold, there's more wear. When the engine is hot, loose. When the engine is hot, everything's loose. The engine's breathing, the oil is flowing. But it'll take 10 to 15 minutes for the engine to get up to temperature properly. So if there's a lot of short journeys in the car around town, that puts more wear on the metal components in the engine. So you need to service the car far more regular if you're doing short journeys around town. So if you're doing motorway miles, you might just need to service it every 20,000 miles. Round town, 7 to 10,000 miles, especially short journeys every day.
Okay. So our next question that's come up was in terms of safety, are there factors to take into account for old cars in terms of safety?
Well, older cars, well, older Volvos are like tanks. So depends on the make. Older cars are not as well. The older cars were safety conscious for their day. Okay, the older cars were built with safety in mind in their day, in their context. What does that mean? It means they didn't know as much as we know now about safety factors or the science of safety. The Swedes prized themselves on the Volvo and the Saabs for their safety record and their protection cell. It's called a crash zone. So a car is designed to crumple, but the actual cockpit where the people sit, that's the safety cell. That's designed to withstand a certain amount of trauma to protect obviously the human body. But the front section have got crumple zones. The back section has a crumple zone. The side sections, the doors, they've all got little strengthening ribs in them. I forget the names of them now. It's been too long. Cross members inside the doors to strengthen them. All cars have that. The older cars generally not as some of the older cars not as strong in terms of not as what's the word efficient in terms of the crumple zones. The modern cars have got more design features built into them to protect the human body. And of course, the seat belts weren't as good in the older cars as well as they are in the newer cars. They were not as sensitive. Some of the older cars don't have crash sensitive seat belts. They're just seat belts that you plug in, and there's no locking mechanism. But most cars in the last 30 years have got that locking mechanism in the seat belt. So if your body goes forward, it locks. And that's fine. But older cars may not have that. But yeah, but then, so yeah, newer cars, yeah, there's more science around that.
Okay. Couple more.
But just remember, what the principle is, the smaller the car, the less protection
you said
you've
you're going
got.
to come to.
The smaller the car, the less protection you've got. That's the thing to remember. The bigger the car, the more protection you've got.
Okay. You said you're going to come on to shortly.
Right then. So if there's no more questions.
To ask the question, what's your buying cars? Yeah.
I just lost you there. Say it again.
Me? So a couple more questions you said you're going to address in a moment. That was what's your view on buying cars from Copart or Bridge with the intention of repairing and reselling to gain a profit? Then someone else has asked a question, how do you check if a car has been in an accident? And someone else has asked a question, what do you think of Fiat Gran Punto? Are they cheap to run?
Okay, let's look at the first one then.
But you said you're going to come
to
buy cars.
Buying a car from where, sorry? To sell up and do up and sell on?
Copart or salvage?
Salvage?
Yeah.
Well, you have to know what you're doing when you're buying cars that have been accident damaged or they've been scrapped. You got to know what you're doing. You have to be in the trade and have enough knowledge to know what you're doing. You can't make money by buying accident damaged cars, repairing them and selling them. You can make money. People make a living. But if a car's being scrapped, there's a reason for it. It means the repair bill is going to be expensive. But if you know what you're doing and you've got the skills, you can do it yourself. You can buy a cheap car as opposed to scrapping it. You can buy it off somebody, give them 200 quid, you can repair it yourself, and you can sell it. You can make a bit of money. You can, but you'll have to be doing the work yourself, and you have to have knowledge and a bit of compos mentis, know how to do it. So you're doing it properly. Yeah, you can. I had friends, I've lost touch with them now, that used to buy and sell cars that were accident damaged, and they made a living from it. Or they would look for cheap cars that the owners were considering scrapping. They would buy them for next to nothing, repair them themselves, and sell them for a couple £100 more than they paid for. but you have to know what you're doing, have the necessary skills to do it. Because if you're paying others to fix them, you're just wiping out your profit and the saving that you would make. But it's possible. What was the next question?
How do you check? How do you check if a car has been in an accident?
If it's been in a significant accident, it will be recorded on the National Computer Database, the DVLA, the Driver Vehicle Licensing Agency, keeps a record of every vehicle that's sold on the roads, everything. Okay, motorbikes, cars, vans, lorries. If the car has been in an accident where there has been an insurance claim on the car, so the insurance have paid for a repair, the repair could be fairly cosmetic, the repair could be major. That will be recorded, and there are websites you can go on to find out the history. You might have to pay £1 or something, but a car that's been in an accident will be recorded in different categories. Okay, so there's a category D write-off, there's a category C write-off, there's a category B. There's different categories. I can't remember what each category represents, but there's different. If it's a minor little repair, it'll have a category. It's been repaired and paid for by the insurance. It's recorded. If it's a major, it'll have a different category bracket, but it's been repaired. So you can look up online. Just put the registration in. Go on these websites. Some are actually free, I think. Some you pay £1 or something minimal, and it'll tell you if it's been a write-off. If it's been a write-off, generally stay away from it, unless you know what you're looking for and you're confident that it's been very well repaired. But because it could have been a write-off with just cosmetic damage. I know what I'm looking for, and a car that's been written off and is recorded in a category will be cheaper to purchase. But if you know it's been in a cosmetic repair, been through a cosmetic repair, the accident was not major. That's been disclosed by the seller, and the seller's been honest, and you know what you're looking for. I would feel comfortable buying one, but I wouldn't recommend you do that. How can you tell if it's been repaired? Number one telltale sign is this. If you haven't got access to the computer, right? Number one, you can tell if it's been repaired if the gaps between the wings and the doors of the top of the wing and the bonnet, if those gaps are uneven, that's the number one telltale sign it's had a major accident. It's had doors replaced, wings replaced, bonnets replaced, because it will be a good repairer that gets those gaps nice and straight and factory finished. It would have to be a top quality repairer that would do that. If it hasn't been repaired by a top quality repairer, you'll see those gaps as a telltale sign. You can tell by the paint finish as well, but you might not be able to tell, but I can. I can tell if a car has been resprayed or a panel has been resprayed by the type of finish in the clear coat or in the base coat. I can tell if it's been painted. But you can't. But it's mainly the gaps in the doors, and if they're uneven, one is fatter than the other. Guaranteed it's had panel replacement.
Okay. And the last question for now is: what do you think of Fiat Gran Puntos? Are they cheap to run?
Fiat Grand Puntos. I once bought a Fiat Punto for a friend of mine when I was at Newbold College training for the ministry. But that was a Fiat Punto. It wasn't a Grand Punto. The Fiat Puntos 20 years ago are different to the Puntos today. Fiat Punto, what size engine does it have? Are they cheap to run? What size engine does it have?
Let us know what size.
Yeah, let us know what size engine it is.
I'll let you carry on past that. Oh, 1.4.
I mean, Fiat Puntos.
1.4 past that. 1.4. 1.4.
Yeah, they're small. Yeah, I can see it. They're smaller cars, Fiat Punto. Happy and again, cheap and cheerful to purchase. Yeah, Italian Fiat. I wouldn't buy a Punto. I'd buy a Japanese, but I wouldn't persuade you out of buying a Punto if that's what you fancy. Other cheap to run, 1.4 petrol. Yep, you should be looking at 50 mile a gallon on a run. 35 round town, 40 round town, 42, 43 combined, 50 plus on a run. You want to buy a car that's going to get around 50 mile a gallon, petrol engine, 1.2, might even get you 55 to 60. One thing to understand and remember is this: when you're buying an older car, the manufacturer's recommended MPG just goes out the window because the car is older and it's a bit worn. So if it says that your Skoda Fabia gets 60 miles a gallon, your 1.2 Skoda Fabia gets 58 miles a gallon when it's 10 years old, don't believe it. It's more like 48 to 52 because it's an older worn engine. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, 1.4 petrol, Fiat Grand Punto. You should be looking at 50 a gallon at least. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank
Fine.
you.
Now then, let's move on to this right then. Who do I buy from? Who do I buy from? Remember I said earlier on, you need to be patient because you do need to be patient these days when you're buying a car. Don't rush unless you actually just perchance stumble across an amazing deal. So you can either buy private or you can buy from like a forecourt, whether that is a main dealer, they can sell second-hand cars, 5 years old, or it's from a lower end forecourt selling cars 3, 4, 5,000. Lower end sort of trader. You've seen them. They're not the main dealers, but they're like the lower end sort of forecourt traders. Or a private trader. You get a load of private traders now. I'm calling them private traders because they are selling from their front door, and they're all over eBay and Gumtree and Facebook. So you've got these different options. Private, so it's from a private family, it's privately owned, hasn't been bought for a profit. Or you've got the forecourt, whether it's the high end or the low end. You've got the private trader who's got maybe 3 or 4 cars in front of his house and he's advertising them all on eBay. Who do you buy from? If you can, your first port of call is private. I always recommend you buy private if you can. So look for somebody who's selling a car privately and ask for the backstory. Whenever I'm buying a car privately, I'm asking him, why is he selling it? And I'm asking him, how long has he had it? 2 most important questions. Why is he selling it? And how long has he had it? If he's had it for 3 months, he's telling you a lie. It's not a private sale. He's selling from his door. He's a private trader trying to sell you it as if he's a private individual. It's not a private sale. So, but if he's had it 2 or 3 years, and you can see that on the logbook, it's a genuine private car. And if you can't buy a private, low mileage, full service history, ask the questions, why is it being sold? They could give you the answer, well, I've decided to buy a new car now. I've had this for 5 years. It's done well. There's nothing wrong with it. I just want to upgrade. You know, and you're looking at the quality, and it sounds as you've got to ask yourself the question, does the narrative match the car? Does the story fit what I'm looking at in front of me? Ask that question. Try private if you can, always the first option. Then you're looking at private trader. Then let's talk about the private traders. These private traders, there's only going to be 5 in every 100 private traders. There's going to be a genuinely honest person. We're talking about Christian honesty now. All right. The vast majority of private traders, right, that aren't converted, they're selling for profit and money, and you've got to be really careful. I'm not saying that you can't find a nice one. I found a lovely Skoda Octavia for Angela, for Sam's mum, from a low end trader. He was selling cars around about the 2, 3, 4,000 pounds mark, and I saw a very low mile, full service history. Everything was beautiful about the car, and I bought it. So I will buy from a low end trader, from a forecourt, but you've got to be very patient, and the good cars will come up few and far between. But if you're patient, you'll get one. If you're prepared to wait a month or 2, you keep looking, even 3 months, you'll find a nice one. So watch out for impulse rushing to buy. So first is private if you can. Then a private trader, okay, be very careful, be very cautious. Ask the same questions about its history. You're looking for the service history. You want a reasonably mild one. So there's not very high miles. You want it in very nice condition. You do find them, but most of what's being sold, they might have had a bit of paintwork to cover rust, a bit of paintwork to cover an accident. Be very careful. Buying from a forecourt, you've got a little bit more. So if you're buying from a forecourt, whether it's a main dealer or even if it's a low-end dealer, you generally do have a little bit more protection. You generally do have about a month to 3 months warranty. We're not talking about years now. You might have even 6 months warranty if you're buying from a forecourt. And there's a little bit more protection there if you're buying from a trader that has a base, as opposed to a trader that's trading from his house. There's no protection there. All right, it's just a private trader. You might not even be registered as a company. You could just be doing it on the side, like I used to. So there's no protection there. It's just the goodwill of the trader. But if you're buying from a registered company on a forecourt, there's a little bit more protection, but you'll pay more. You'll pay more because they've got the price high. The cheaper cars generally are private because they are private. They're not looking for profit. They haven't purchased it to make money. They're just selling it because they want a different car for whatever reason. But if you're buying from a forecourt or from any trader for that matter, you're buying a car at a slightly inflated price as opposed to private. Depending on the price of the car, if the price is valued at £1,000, you could be paying £200 more from a trader, or even £3. But if the car is priced in the £5,000 or £6,000 price bracket, you could be paying £1,000 more for the car from a trader, as opposed to a private. As much as £1,000 more at a car valued around £4,000 or £5,000. So these are things to consider when who you're buying from. I've bought from private. I've bought from traders at the door. I've bought from the low-end forecourts because I know what I'm looking for, and I've walked away from many cars. I've actually walked away from 100 cars in my life, and I've only purchased 20 because you have to be careful what you're buying. It's your money at the end of the day. You know, it's your money, and it's your hard-earned, precious money that you've saved for the last 6 months or even 2 years, and you don't want to let that go to some unscrupulous dealer that's hiding some history, hiding some fault with the car. But above everything else, you pray, and you pray again. And you can call Pastor Hush as well, and I'll give you some wisdom and tips, but I can't put the time in like I used to be able to. And I'm not the expert anyway, but there will be some people in your churches who have experience in purchasing, and and there may be some mechanics in the churches. Get to know them. Some panel beater spray painters in the churches. Get to know them. We have a panel beater spray painter in Nottingham. All right, we have mechanics in Nottingham Central and Bulwell and Upper Room churches. Get to know them because these people will help you, and it's always good to have that expert advice as well. So that kind of covers everything I was looking at. Are there any more questions? We're coming up to 2059.
A couple questions, Pastor, just as we're coming towards the end. Any recommendations for a first car for a learner living in a clean air zone in Birmingham?
That clean air zone, that's the central zone, isn't it? I don't know about the laws. I think the car has to be less than so many years old. Well, okay, I don't understand what's the stipulations around the clean air zone. It's got to be younger than 6 years old or something. I haven't looked into that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you'd have to look into what. Well, any small car, 1000cc, 1.1, 1.2. petrol engine, it's going to be in the lower emissions bracket. Okay, so you won't pay so much for those charges. But I think in Birmingham, I heard that it's cars under a certain age are fine.
So
cars over a certain age, you've got to pay.
The message me saying, I think it's above 2006 for petrol, and I think it might be a different age for diesel.
Yeah, petrol engines are cleaner than diesel, much cleaner. And if you want a cheap petrol engine, 1 litre, 1.1, 1.2, Go for the little Toyotas, the little Nissans. Go for your little Japanese cars, or your little, even your little Puntos and things. Yeah, listen, there's lots of choice now, but I would recommend you stay away from Skoda because they develop a lot of electrical problems. Skoda Octavias, Fabias, lots of electrical problems when they get up to 8, 9, 10 years old. Actually, I'm going to let you into a secret now. BMWs, electrical problems. Electrical problems, BMWs, but that's not your price bracket, so we'll leave that one. But Skoda, Fabias might look nice, and they might be reasonably priced, 1,500 quid, 1,200 quid, but the electric window winder will stop working, electric door locks will stop working. It's just a pain and it's expense. So keep it, I would say Japanese, yeah, go French, yeah, go American. Cars are reliable these days, low mileage, 1 litre, 1.1, 1.2, 1.4 maximum if it's your first car. 1.4 maximum if it's your first car. And you can't go wrong, really, with a Japanese car.
Couple more questions. So as you can hear, Pastor's pro-Japanese. Couple more questions. Are people buying cars privately during the pandemic?
Are people buying cars? Yeah. Cars are buying and selling.
Okay. And
yes, they are. And that, in fact, you might get a slightly cheaper rate during the pandemic. There's not as many people buying. If you were buying a house during like in the month of May or June, you get a really good. You could knock them down 10 grand because no one's buying houses. There's less people maybe on the market now, but as we're coming out, the market will pick up. So you could try and be cheeky and knock them down a bit more.
Then last couple of questions. Which is better? Which do you think is better, diesel or petrol?
For longevity, it will always be diesel, but it's dirtier. And actually the fashion now is to move away from diesel. Yeah, for the environmental reasons. I mean, I'll just share with you. I think I'm actually moving away from diesel because petrol engines are a bit cleaner than diesel, even though diesel's engines generally last longer and are reliable. But when the diesel engine does break, it's more expensive to fix than a petrol engine. Petrol engines are cheaper to fix than a diesel engine. I should have said this earlier. Diesels, when they're working well, economical, but dirty. But when they break, it will cost you probably 30% more than a petrol engine to fix, even more, 40%. I've got lots of mechanic friends, and I've got a garage I take my cars to for the last 16 years. And they all tell me petrol engines might not last as long as a diesel engine. Petrol engine will be wearing out at 150,000, 180,000. Okay, diesels might do 200,000-300,000 easy. But when they break, they scrap, big money. Petrol, they can be fixed for tens or a few £100. Diesel, the scrap value.
Okay.
Yeah. What was the question? Did I digress?
I think you've answered it. They were just asking which do you think is better, diesel or petrol?
I mean, I'm just sharing with you my thoughts. I think I'm moving to petrol now, and my wife as well. I think more people are. But if you're on the motorway and you're doing big miles, you're up and down, you're doing long distance, you want a nice cruiser. You want a 2-litre diesel or a 2-litre petrol. You want a cruiser. I've got the president phoning in. I'll call him back. Yeah.
Last question. What are your thoughts on Peugeots?
Peugeots. I tell you what, of the French cars, they're my favorite of the French cars.
Okay.
Peugeots back in the 80s were renowned for their engines. And in fact, the other French manufacturers were using Peugeot engines back in the 80s. So Peugeots, of the 3 French big ones, Peugeots are my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good engines, good cars, good solid cars.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you for coming through. We'll say a prayer. I don't think there's any more questions. I think we've done it. We'll say a prayer, and I'll let everybody go. Dear Lord, we thank you for the time that we've had here. We thank you for the information that we've had. Thank you for Pastor Hush and the knowledge that he's been able to pass on. Help us to be able to use this information productively and proactively. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Hush, for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Take care, everybody. Take care. See you later.